here and see me. So, good morning, everyone. I'm Rupangli from Team QAI and STC. Today we have here Mr. Rajesh Sarangapani from Cigniti. He's the head of innovation and technology at the Center of Excellence at Cigniti. He has been the architect for Cigniti's next-gen quality engineering platform, Blue Swan TM, and also holds multiple patents in the same space. Over a career span of 25 years, Rajesh has been individualizing quality-centric approach to build quality by design, thereby helping clients deliver exceptional IT and business outcomes. Today, he'll be speaking on how enterprises can scale test automation and is democratization the silver bullet. So, over to you, Rajesh.
Hey, thanks for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. So today, I think we wanted to bring home our thinking, if you will, in terms of test automation that is very prevalent as a testing practice to predominantly improve testing efficiencies. And while we, as a testing practitioner community and testing practitioners in various enterprises, constantly struggle to up the scale in terms of how test automation is employed as a practice. And while I go through this journey, I think inside Cigniti, we have been part of the same sort of a wave that swept across in terms of how we could introduce new techniques, how we could employ some of the technology that is out there in the market to make test automation easier for our clients. While we have done this journey on our own in terms of multiple test automation engagements that we have delivered for our clients, you will see we sort of slightly differentiating in terms of how we would position some of the tooling that is out there in the market vis-a-vis what we have as a thinking. So, diving a little bit deep in terms of our own thinking, uh, before I do the actual test automation, introduce you to the test automation platform, uh, let us reflect on what the typical customer expectations, primarily stemming from the digital transformation initiatives that are happening. Enterprises today are uh, are at a, I would say, at a point where speed is essence, which means when they want to drive their digital transformation, speed has become such an essence element with all the practices that we have put together, be it methodology that we adopt from agile to DevOps, and testing from various analysis that has been done by analyst and own practitioner community is seen as the primary bottleneck, if you will, in terms of how testing is being influenced and how speed has become very very essential for all that we do. And some of the reports, we see that 50% of the time is being spent in testing alone when you compare to other life cycle activities. Again, from a scale standpoint, we have seen ourselves while we do this journey along with our clients is when you talk about best practices and practices that are very very um, helpful in specific set of engagements, be it DevOps or testing at scale. Whenever we drive test automation, typically we are successful with a project team or a scrum team, and then you sort of scale it up, and then eventually see that the enterprise fails to adopt at the scale at which it likes for some of the best practices. And that is the primary reason typically you will see a lot of test automation initiatives pick up, have their own waves of peaks and troughs, and then eventually die down because the ability for the platform to support the scale at which it necessarily has to evolve to is something that that lacks conviction, that lacks the relevancy in terms of how the teams are set up. So scale is an issue. So speed, scale, agility. Again, it is a very, very important aspect, because we are not living in a world where an application is built and there is no evolution. So you need, your test automation platform needs to be flexible enough, be easy to sort of go and evolve to an application artifact that is being developed at the speed at which we just spoke about. So essentially, you need test automation platforms that are agile enough, are able to evolve to the applications that are being developed. And finally, I would say the four cornerstones of one: speed, scale, agility. Finally, what matters is how effective is your test automation? Is it reusable? It is easy to use? Can it uh, be maintainable? So all your abilities of your test automation matter. And we have seen tons of times that small change in the application trips your test automation. So they are not resilient, reliable in essence. So when you look at digital transformation initiatives that are being done today, all the four right side that you see: speed, scale, agility, quality, matter. And if your test automation platform is not able to deliver some of these outcomes, then you would imagine there is the regular hype cycle, and then eventually no tool really addresses this. Of course, there are other things that are expectations, that if it can be intelligent, can I use it as part of my testing cycles in sprint and resilient? But the four key pillars in which the test automation platforms need to address is speed, scale, agility, and quality. So where do we stand today, right? If you look at, uh, we have multiple platforms. Scriptless is the vogue. If you type a scriptless platform, a scriptless word in Google today, you would find tons of these, I would say, tools that would come in from from a market standpoint. So just to reiterate, of course, uh, this platform that I'm going to introduce is primarily a scriptless platform, but our thinking is beyond one persona, and I will sort of deep dive a little bit again to help you understand what do we really have to offer. So if you look at why these platforms, we just touched upon time to market is of essence, and speed to innovation, speed to value, or time to value, if you will, is of essence. So the faster your testing can be run in terms of your testing cycles, the better it is. And the other critical aspect is talent that is available. Today's tools are probably are single persona driven, which means that if I am an automation engineer, if I am an SDET, there are tools in the market aligned to the skill set. If there are if there are other personas, for example, a business analyst, functional testing analyst, they probably have other set of tools in the market. So there is no one tool that is addressing a specific set of personas, which is your talent inside the ecosystem. It is not about a developer or an estate or an automation engineer, or a specific set of individuals like functional testing. If you try to reflect, your functional testing teams have the business knowledge, the functional knowledge across the applications. Their tool sets are completely different from what tool sets that are available with the developer community or the automation engineer community. So there is a huge issue in terms of how we today offer tools and platforms that eventually result in lower ROI. Essentially, because the applications are evolving, you don't have people contributing as a shared responsibility for your automation, and eventually the cost of building an automation pack is way high than what is required. And I did touch upon scale. If you are talking about specifically scaling your test automation, we are not talking about today, in today's world. When you talk about DevOps, if you want to automate everything, then the cost of building a test automation should be very, very low. And the overall economics of building a test automation, once the costs are low, you should be able to leverage every skill in your team. If you're a test automation engineer, you should be able to contribute. Today's tools, the way they take the entire paradigm of developing test automation is almost like a left or a right wing sort of a view from a political standpoint, right? They either have capabilities that are very, very centric towards the engineering community, or there is a very bias towards a business analyst or a functional analyst community. But today, if you have to have a higher ROI, if you have to scale, it can't be one man's contribution or one person's contribution inside the team or a one skill contribution. So we have to figure out a method to madness in terms of how you would scale, and primarily driving from the fact that we all talk about reusability of test assets. Seldom that happens on the ground. And this is also stemming from the fact that there is a multi-persona team setup, multi-capability, multi-skill team setup in your agile and DevOps teams, but none of them actually contribute to testing, which is primarily, of course, championed by the testing team or the QA or QE team. But there is no reuse across these multiple personas. And we have seen multiple times when you talk about BDD approach, typically I've seen low mature clients, actually the test automation engineer creates the BDD artifacts rather than the other people as part of the value chain up above. So this is the sort of setup that we have. A, the digital enterprise is asking for speed, scale, agility, quality, is the demand for us to be meeting the expectations from a digital transformation standpoint. And the way it is separate today is there is multiple persona, there is a pressure for speed to market. We are plagued by lower ROI because of various reasons that I just spoke about in terms of the cost of test automation, the application evolves, and primarily when it starts, there is a lot of test automation created, and eventually there is a lot of technical debt because the application evolves. There is no reuse. So there are multiple challenges that an enterprise typically faces, right? And that's the reason we as Cigniti, though we've started our journey with a scriptless platform in mind so that we will be able to scale it up in terms of test automation. But I would say our platform is more multi-persona platform, which means that you typically start by developing test automation assets. And when I talk about barrier, most of the focus, of course, is on barrier to reduce test authoring from a test automation standpoint, which is a critical activity as well. But the idea is, if you take, I would always quote how the developer community has evolved in terms of how they have developed their own architectures and code design, and getting inspired from them is very, very important, because that's how you cross learn and see how we could leverage. So today, if you look at the developer community, they've evolved to an architecture that can act, actually, based on your talent pool, they'll be able to develop an application. For example, if you have people with core skills or .NET or C Sharp and Java, eventually, because of the REST based and microservices based architecture, if they have all the best practices in place, a team with Go can still develop some services, a team skilled with C Sharp still develop some services. So if you look at the way the current reference architectures are being developed, and if it's an enterprise uh, uh, best practice oriented, we will be able to leverage multiple skilled people still contributing to our overall application architecture. So that is the same inspiration that we need to take, irrespective of which skill you produce. Are you able to contribute in developing test automation? And how does your test automation platform that is there reduce the barrier, not just to authoring, but also the other aspects of the life cycle, right? For example, can my test automation platform help you suggest an automated test pack to test execute? Can my test automation platform help to reduce the time to report. So these are the broad use cases that we are trying to sort of address in the platform. So again, just to reiterate, and the key takeaways for us is, you have today's world, skilled automation resources is I would say a challenge, uh, and reuse of test assets. So the handoffs that happen between, say, a technical tester to a dev tester or a business tester, all these handoffs don't seem to be gelling, and each one of them are unique in nature. I'm not saying this is the first time we are trying to introduce such a capability, but you would still understand that when the rubber meets the road, there are some smaller things that don't happen well, and thereby you face a lot of challenges in actually reusing these test assets. So our proposition there is to ensure how a multi-persona team can actually establish test automation to scale up, and the constant evolution of the applications can be addressed with some of the technical capabilities that we have. And of course, these are the challenges, and what we are doing at our end from an Insta standpoint is, we are attempting democratization of test automation using some of these things that we are trying to put together. And we, over the last 2 years, we sort of ensured some of our large enterprise clients adopt this thinking and are able to deliver value for what we have done here. Especially, I would maybe digress a little bit to give a case in a point where their current test automation team were probably trying to put together a test automation framework, then translating that to value. They are able to scale up to a specific extent. Once we started introducing Insta, there was a lot of resistance to change, because again, a new platform, again, a new tool technique. So once we saw that there was a resistance, we sort of looked at some of the capabilities that Insta delivers. We were able to convince them that the functional engineers are better placed in terms of delivering test scripts, and we use scriptless techniques to actually deliver democratization. And the way we've achieved is, we've almost helped them use reuse the current test automation artifacts that are generated by the functional test engineers to be actually formatted or delivered in the form of how they have done their own framework. So some of the quick examples that I would give, I know 30 to 40 minutes is not um, complete justice to what we can bring from an Insta standpoint. But I will show you a couple of examples of videos that actually helped move away test assets that are in manual shape to test automation, and the other way in the form of a code, and in the framework that the test automation engineers would love to. And thereby we saw huge, how I would say, change in terms of scaling, because when we talked about test automation scale and the reliability that we had to give, we were talking about somewhere in the form of 100 scripts, 100 to 1000 scripts. Once we started to introduce this technique, we were able to scale almost like 10, 15x, based on, of course, the relevancy of how this test automation pack is being viewed, as well as from a overall return on investment standpoint. So that's one example of how we are trying to create value, not just limiting ourselves to a single persona tool, but we are trying to help them develop a well-rounded test automation pack that can address that can address. And one quick thing before I move away from this topic is, the functional test engineers have relevant functional knowledge about the app, and they were able to once pick up the ease of how they could create scripts. They were able to deliver much faster scripts, because they had uh, the umpteen knowledge of how the application works and what test data to. So there is no need of a KT to actually develop scripts, right? So that is precisely what we have achieved. And on the other hand, the experts were able to manage the entire test automation architecture on their own, because they've built a robust architecture. So our pitch has never been use Insta and throw away all the other tools. Our pitch has been use Insta along with other uh, players in the ecosystem so that they can equally contribute. And whenever you whenever you have benefits of, say, improved productivity or reliability and ability to analyze, that's where you're planning specific activities or reporting specific activities can be handed over to a platform that can help you do that. And finally, before I switch gears in terms of some of the demos that I would do quickly on some of the key capabilities, is again getting inspired from our own developer community. They have multiple frameworks that make application production ready. For example, Spring Boot as a framework, it helps you do a lot of things faster for you to achieve a specific set of capability than if you will, for example, cross-functional things like security and ability to throttle requests and so on. If you are building a custom application, of course, once you are in cloud, probably it's much more abstracted and easy to deliver production ready applications. But if you were the traditional bespoke application and you're trying to build things upfront, and Insta specifically has been designed to ensure that quality of your test automation is up there in terms of how you would be able to do that. So these are the two key thinking that we've developed over a period in time. There are multiple use cases that we have leveraged AI, and some of them would be common in work today. It'll help you. It has an intelligent recorder. It'll help you do the NLP stuff. Again, our thinking again around test execution is around auto scaling. We believe that once you, as a team, mature test automation to the highest, you will want to sign up for, from a DevOps team standpoint, to give feedback much faster than you do today from your test automation, do automatic toll gating or give feedback. So you need ability to almost auto scale your infrastructure based on all the analytics that we would run. If you would have imagined how your AWS works in terms of the demand that happens on the system, based on a specific set of policy and rule, it sort of scales out to take more traffic. Similarly, in our auto scaling, we understand how many scripts we have to run, and we build out containers, we build out more capabilities that would address the faster feedback loop cycles that we would do. False positive analyzer is again an important tool and technique that we use to sort of weed off all the alarms that are there from a false positive standpoint, and do some actionables as well, and so on. So there are other key capabilities that we developed. I would not completely drain today for all that we do. So at a very high level, we as a platform are easy to use. I did speak about multi persona auto scale to help us really up the ante in terms of the scale, as well as be able to quickly run through your DevOps testing cycles. Heal, so that you are able to evolve to your application, remediate with some policies. We will be able to quickly remediate specific items, and also for the next testing cycle, we'll be able to sort of address that. In terms of coverage, we given some process changes and tools, and the way it sort of ensures that you're able to run through your test automation pack with relevant, so do change impact analysis, recommend a testing pack, run the testing pack, so that you're able to execute the capabilities of the current change that was executed. So broadly, I would say these are the key capabilities, and from what we bring to the table, like I said, we so there are multi personas in the team. We'll be able to get this platform in the hand of people that are able to deliver value from an automation standpoint. uh, Stability and reliability, we take care that your quality of test automation that is being delivered from the test automation platform is up to the mark, and they are production ready. They're able to sort of uh, improve the reliability of your test automation assets that come. Because of the multi persona, you almost hand over tools that are that are much more aligned to the persona, and thereby You would have more coverage because of the scale that you'll achieve, more productivity because I know the tools best to what I can bring to the table. And overall, we believe that because of this, the cost of quality, the overall parameters of how you would determine the entire cost of quality would reduce because you'll achieve scale, you'll be able to do things that are much faster, better, cheaper. So that's broadly what the key capabilities are. I will actually run through some of the. I know we are at the. Um, do we have time for questions, or can someone help me with the time check, please, so I can.
Uh, Rajesh, we can go on. We have time. No worries.
Okay, thank you. Can I do the demo for about next 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure. We can.
Okay, okay, thank you. So here, what I'm going to do probably with respect to the next 10 minutes from a demo standpoint is to show you how we've addressed multiple personas, because that's a key to two things. One is bring the best tools to bear in terms of how from a skill set standpoint they match to each other. That's one. The second aspect to it is how, about scaling and being able to reuse the test automation artifacts. So that is something that I will talk about, and if time permits, I'll also be able to talk about some of the auto healing and capability. So there is this is a standard interface you would have seen in multiple tools. Again, we're not claiming a set of unique, but the way we have tried to solve it is something that is unique, and we leverage AI to help us do that. It's a simple test case that is trying to create or register a user, going through the process. So you'll also be able to type in natural language. It also intelligently records all the actions and be able to sort of do the necessary test scripting that is required. Insta has its own DSL, and this DSL is core to how we will be able to manage all the democratization stuff that is there. It brings a lot of reusability, thinking back into four in terms of how it actually looks at. So there are multiple paths to get to the DSL, and that's what is we are trying to democratize. So it has its own interface. Again, that's why I'm saying we are not restricting the end user to actually make the choices because of the tool. The end user is almost the entire thing is almost adaptable to what we do as a team. And from an Insta standpoint, I did speak about the actual test automation platform getting you production ready test automation suite. It also means once you develop your script, you need a method to match this in terms of how you would execute your test cases. So there is a easy to use interface to sort of tell you all the key capabilities that are there. You'll be able to run through multiple data sets. You can do headless execution, select which browser do you want, and whether, like I said, there's a policy that you could switch on if you want to really automate, auto remediate on or off. So these are some production ready capabilities that we bring here to bear in terms of the overall test execution and developing your this one. So one of the counterintuitive question is, you have the intelligent recorder. It's not pure play recording, you would say. It is also looking at some of the aspects. Did the test automation get created? The component is already available. It sort of prompts you for what all actions have been recorded. Can I reuse? There is also a diagnostics inside to continuously prompt and say this is probably need to be repaired, or you are seeing a lot of artifacts that are uh, not easy to maintain, not easy to reuse, and so on. So we help while the recording happens, we continuously take care that it becomes data driven, and all the best practices that you would want from a typical test automation platform. B, it is also trying to make sense in terms of what all reusable challenges you would face, what all maintainability challenges you would face. So it is an intelligent recorder that way in terms of helping you make sure that you're able to address some of the key challenges that as practitioners you would imagine. So this is one way. It could be a functional testing analyst, and our sort of in sort of reflection from some of the multitude engagements that we have executed is a typical test engineer with good functional skills in terms of analysis and his own application domain knowledge. We are able to uh, uh, we are able to sorry we are able to show a lot of value in terms of how um, the simple to medium complex scripts can be created much faster from your own testing team. The other artifact that we will go through is typical test automation transformation that will happen, because I did mention that the test automation artifact that is there with Insta is have its own DSL. I'm showing a typical test case or use case that converts manual to automation cases. Of course, there are some NLP that is involved. This is the typical manual test case that is out there, and we use intents of the test case. We use NLP to understand what is the intent of the test case, and then Insta goes through all. It's almost like auto browsing your functionality, and this is from Salesforce. So we use the manual test intent that is captured. This is just demoable from, we picked up an Excel sheet, and we are trying to put together back in the test automation form. And once all of this is understood, it directly goes and saves into your test automation repo, which is our management platform, the web based interface. And we go through the entire process of pushing that back to your test automation management platform. So Insta has actually auto browsed all the intents that you had, and it saves back into the via the intelligent designer that we have back to your test automation platform in the format that Insta actually has. So I showed you one. If there is a functional testing expert out there, he will he will actually uh, use the intelligent recorder. So that's one way to go and do your test automation. So if a new script is being built, that could be one. Or if you had a manual test case somewhere from a legacy standpoint, that's the approach that the current testing teams are creating. If the manual test intents are there, we will be able to uh, pull out a test automation script that is in the DSL that Insta expects. And from there, I'll show the other part of the other part of how we would do is, once you have the DSL and everything is recorded, this is the case I was speaking about, that once you have, though it's shown as generate code, we have templates that we have created that will help us generate the code in the automation framework that the current team has. So there are multiple ways to reuse. In the client case study that I was speaking about, is you do test automation either from pulling from a script, intelligent recorder, or we will be able to generate exactly in the format that the test automation engineers actually already have. So all the artifacts that are there are generated in the format. It's almost, for crude purposes, from a layman standpoint, you could say we almost generated code to the extent possible in the way, in the format that is there. And if you give your template in terms of how you would automate, we are also able to uh, push code in the format or template that you would have already created. So initial days, when we were talking about Insta and AI and auto healing and all of that, the challenge that we saw from a lot of teams is, we have an existing framework, and typically the sales pitch that we have seen from many tools out there is, just use our tool and everything will be solved, or is it's a silver bullet sort of a solution, right? But that's not what life is all about. We are able to from the typical challenges that we see is there is already an existing artifact, and we are able to run through some of our test automation in a way that it is easy to automate, which I showed you in the intelligent recorder. There's also an existing artifact. How do I make the existing artifact also coexist with my own deliverables that I have provided, right? So that is, I think, is key for this whole test automation journey, and it is not going to be possible by a single persona in your team to deliver test automation. It is a multi-persona setup that you have as a Scrum team, and hence some of them could be API testing that you could take up. Some of them could be from your developer community. You should be able to reuse if they have created, and the other way around, if there is an end-to-end test that we could stitch from their own deliverable, that is also should be possible, and vice versa. If the automation engineer has already created a script, you can also have something called by insta itself that add a step, it will execute a custom script, and we are able to, so the reuse across the enterprise and the ease of use that we will be able to develop is what differentiates from the current existing players in the market to what insta as a solution that we are trying to provide. So that's broadly what I wanted to sort of cover in terms of how we've been able to a develop scripts that are very very easy to develop from a functional testing background. You could reuse across the multiple personas that are out there, be it an automation engineer to your functional test engineer or a developer, and eventually have a platform that is helping you to develop production ready. And I would pause here to take if there are any questions. There are other key capabilities like auto heal, auto scale that would take some amount of time to actually go through the process. I'll probably pause here for questions, and if there is any, or based on the time, I could also do some more additional things. Any questions for me?
Thank you so much, Rajesh, for the insightful session that we had. All the expectations about the test automation, scriptless platform, and the value propositions for Insta and the demo, especially, all were very insightful. At the moment, we seem to have run out of time. We'll be sharing
Okay,
any questions that we have with you via email, and we can you can answer them there.
sure.
Thank